in studio. Good morning, Brian.
Yes, and you can see I brought the sunshine in because there's no sunshine looking out the window. It's all cloudy.
Definitely no sunshine
Yeah,
outside, but very warm here in the studio,
Well, I
Brian.
told you, Eskom called me again. They said to me, look, we know your body has excess energy. Can we buy it from you? And I said, look, what are the terms and conditions? They said, well, very simply, it's 120-day payable. I'm not taking any chances of waiting for 120 days. And then when they told me where they want to put the cable, I decided to leave it. I'll keep my own energy.
Well, of course, we know on
And
a week like this,
busy
on a
week
like
this week.
yeah, we're grateful to have you, Brian,
busy
because you've been doing TV interviews. Your phone is ringing off the hook because everybody wants to know what you have to say. So hold your horses. We'll get into talking finance in a moment. Of course, we've got lots of your WhatsApp voice notes from the open line. This message just came in, and I just want to read it out before we take the voice notes. And it's from Anonymous. Anonymous says, "Hi, Cathy. I was just listening to your caller having a problem with the money for transport. And it reminded me that when I was in the same situation where I didn't have bus fare to travel from Gauteng to Cape Town, and a stranger helped me. I left Gauteng with no butkos. I was able to get to Cape Town and never looked back. I completed my undergraduate degree through NSFAS and part bursary from UCT. Today, I have 2 degrees, a postgraduate diploma, and currently busy with the executive MBA, all from UCT. Amazing. I'm getting chills. If there's no one offering to help, I don't mind booking the bus ticket for her to Cape Town. And I'm also based in Cape Town if she encounters some problems. I can see that if I speak to our CSI committee at work to check if they also have funds to help such students, I would like to remain anonymous. Anonymous, thank you so much for sharing that story.
Great story.
It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful.
Because sometimes, just the moments that allow us to access our destiny can come from people that we didn't even think about, complete strangers, and I love that you've shared that story. So thank you, Anonymous, and we'll put you in touch with Stephen to help his daughter make his way from the Free State to school in the Western Cape. All right, here's some of your WhatsApp voice notes, and then we'll talk finance in a bit.
Hi, McAfee. Jacob speaking here. I'm currently in Benoni, but gae ke Limpopo ga Sekhukhune. Man, a ke tsebe gore le ka gona gore thusha we struggling ka tsela go na le naga ba re ke Sekhukhune Mountains in Luwolo Gakobe. We're struggling with the road. We've been trying to engage the municipality, but we are not winning because of financial issues and stuff. So I don't know if maybe you can one day invite the mayor there or the people that are supposed to assist us with service delivery. We only need a road and water. Thank you.
Good morning, Sis Cathy and your team, Jumbo Africa. Today they are going to table the state of the province here in Northwest. Sis Cathy, every year they keep tabling state of the province. We are not benefiting nothing there. We don't have even premier. The money they are going to send back money to national treasury. Sis Cathy, you are assuming in pool of poverty and unemployment. Is there something normal? Service delivery, we don't know what is the service delivery in Northwest. They are going to loot that money, buying people of Mafikeng donkey cars. They are going to build Sheikh call center in Ramatlabama. Our CFO still 1.4 million bribe. Those guys are stealing. We don't know what is the service delivered, and there is no accountability. Is there something normal? They steal like they want. The labor is not working since last year from November until today. It's not working. People are struggling to get UIF. Pacey in Matlosan.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM. Talking finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, Brian. So not unexpected that a lot of the focus now is on the budget speech. And what can we expect?
Well, the minister's got a real problem because we've undercollected in taxes.
Only one.
Well, the major problem is he's got to now balance the books, and his job is not political. His business job is finance. And we haven't collected enough in tax. The mines are struggling. We saw all the platinum companies come out with the results this week. So that's a problem. And over-expenditure of government expenditure. So that's another problem. So you've got a double deficit because you've also got imports versus exports. We started to import a lot more than we're exporting. So we've got that double deficit. So he's got to now balance the books. Where does the money come from? So let me say this. We're hoping, and I doubt if there'll be an increase in VAT. Because if you're going to increase in VAT, you've got to plan for it a good year in advance. You've got to explain to the public what items are going to be zero VAT rated so that they can be prepared when they hear about more VAT. They know more products, and particularly the products that the less fortunate people buy, that it'll be excluded from VAT. But you've got to do that education. You can't just spring it on. So I'm hoping that won't happen. I'm also hoping, with NHI now looming, that the government doesn't decide to take tax credits away from taxpayers, because, as you know, under the age of 65, you get a tax credit. It's not a rebate; it's an actual deduction from your tax. So you can get a deduction of anything, depending, in your particular case, husband, wife, 2 children. You can get a deduction from your tax of somewhere in the order of around about 800 to 900 rand a month, which will be deducted from your tax at the end of the year, 12,000 rand. If that's now going to be taxed, then at your tax rate, depending on anyone's tax rate, you could be paying those extra taxes. I'd like to see the tax bands adjusted more than just statistical inflation, simply because, you know, what inflation rate are they going to use? They talk about high inflation, and normally what they do is they just adjust the bands so that you pay a little bit less tax at each level of earnings. Maybe people, those that do have money have been earning a lot more interest on that money. It's not that it's a bonus, it's to live on, and hopefully there may be a little bit of increase in the tax rebates. That we haven't had that tax increase for nearly 7 years. 22,800 for those under 65, 34,500 for those over 65, somewhere around about those figures. Like to see that adjusted. And very simply, we all get primary rebates, and those primary rebates are up to age 65, then 65 to 75, and 75 onwards. Look, difficult one because it's a political year, and you've got to decide. So he's got a difficult job. I'll report back on next Monday or next Tuesday. I will be dealing with it tomorrow on what is happening. So look. Hopefully we stop listening and say nothing happened in this budget. That's about the best that we can hope for.
Do you think that there is a likelihood, particularly when it comes to sort of priority areas of the government, that the spending around those will remain pretty much the same and then have readjustments in the medium-term budget policy statement?
Well, that's a long way along the medium-term budget.
Yeah, I know.
Remember, the two-pot system, which we're going to talk to shortly, only comes in on the 1st September. So I'm not sure what's going to happen there. Maybe what is going to happen?
Brian, realistically, the minister unlikely to come out and say, well, actually, we're reducing, the government wage bill. That's unlikely to happen.
It's unlikely to happen. And then let's hope
3-4 months before an election.
Yeah, and then let's hope what happens with government grants. I mean, the non-working.
Well, the president has already confirmed that it's going on.
Yeah, but is it going to increase? Because if you think about 350 rand, it's 11 rand a day. It's so difficult, and also, it's not always that easy to get that grant. There's a lot of paperwork required. If they'd make that a little bit easier and those type of things, probably see an increase in pensions, the elderly pensions, and all the different grants that come to children and pensioners and those type of things. So there is a little bit that he has to manoeuvre, he has to create, but they don't have the money.
All right. Okay. So that's a part of what you can expect coming up in the budget speech, at least according to Brian. Let's get into today's business, Brian. I wanted you to firstly deal with the issue of widows and the tax they pay. It was as a result of a call we received from one of our listeners who says, she's been receiving pension. Her husband died about 10 to 15 years ago. But the problem is that pension that she receives, SARS takes it and combines it with her salary, and it puts her in a different tax bracket, and she now owes the taxman lots of money, and she wants, to see this revised. How does it work, Brian?
Okay, well, understand whoever pays you, and particularly a pension, deducts tax based on the pension that you receive. And then you've also got to bear in mind when she lost her husband, she acquired his assets, she acquired his pension, and now she becomes the sole taxpayer. When her and her husband were alive, they were taxed separately. Now everything is matched under her taxable income, and she's taxed. So what happens is, if she's got income from investments, if she's got capital gains tax that she may have incurred during the course of the year, she's now going to got her pension and her husband's pension. It's all lumped together as one amount, and as you go into new bands, your tax rates start going up. So that is the problem number one. Not enough tax has been deducted at source. So if you've got two pensions, one from government or one from a private company, and you're earning interest, it's put together, and each component is taxed separately. As a matter of fact, your interest and capital gains won't be taxed daily or weekly or monthly. They'll be taxed at the end of the tax year. So you are going to be underpaying tax all the long way. Even if you've got two pensions, if you've got two retirement funds, one from Mutual and one from Liberty, and you're getting an amount, let's say you're getting 10,000 Rand from each of them, you may not be taxed at all, because at that level, there may be the level of 120,000 may not be taxed. But when you put them together, you're in a level bracket now of 240,000, and then the tax tables start to play. And at 240,000, you're going to be paying somewhere in the order of 18 to 20% tax. So what you need to do with anyone who's got a tax problem, you need to look at all your investments, because there are ways of, I spoke last week about retirement annuity, where you can reduce your taxable income and at the same time save money. And there's a trick here. And I don't want to get too complicated, but many people have asked me, when you retire or when you get retrenched from a business, you can make use of the 550,000 Rand that you can get tax-free. But many individuals have never had that advantage of getting that 550, because they wouldn't have been maybe retrenched, and maybe the older generation would not have had a retirement annuity or pension fund. So they can maneuver now, before the end of this tax year, a lump sum into retirement annuity based on 27.5% of taxable income. So this widow says, I've got a taxable income, and I've got my husband's pension. Maybe what I could do is work out with my accountants, how much can I put into retirement annuity, up to a maximum of 350,000. So you pay the money into retirement annuity now, you get the tax deduction, and in March next week, you can virtually withdraw the money out. And if two factors exist, one, you've never had the 550,000. Two, your fund is less than 247,500. So to be example, someone goes to Liberty, someone goes to Momentum, they give them 175,000 Rand before the end of this week. The 175 each, that 350 comes off their taxable income. And in March, when they apply to receive that money back, because firstly, the contract with each company is less than 247,500. They can actually get all of that tax-free, and because they've never had the 500, they could be saving anything between 220,000 and 100,000 Rand by doing that. And if anyone wants more details, they should email me at info@anchorcapital.co.za. info@anchorcapital.co.za, and we will send you how you go about doing that. But coming back to this widow, there are ways of investing money, because you must remember, if you're getting 10% today and you're paying tax at 40%, your tax rate is 40%. Am I getting too complicated, Cathy?
A little bit.
Okay. Well, let's go back the other way. If
Yeah.
you earn gross income of 10% and you pay 40, your marginal rate with all your other incomes, the last rand that you earn is taxed at 40%. So 10% less 40%, you're only getting 6%. You can buy products from insurance companies, which are called income and growth plans, where you can get good rates of return, tax-free, because they've already taken off the tax at around about 6.5 to 6.6%, and you could lock that in for 5 years, because remember, interest rates are going to come down over the next 1 to 5 years. So when you're seeing these fancy interest rates at the moment, they are coming down. So you need to engage with a financial planner who can help you and help you get through and go through this jungle with you of how can you minimize tax, what can you do, try and turn taxable income into capital gains tax, because taxable income is taxed at anything at the higher level of 45%, whereas capital gains is 18%. So there are a lot of plans you can make when it comes to tax. Sorry if I've
Sure.
complicated our
Yeah.
listeners. Really, I'm just saying, but if you want more information of ways of making use of that 550,000, and I repeat, if you've never had that 550 and you're over 55, because when you retire, you have to be 55, contact us and we'll send you some.
So Brian, my understanding from her is that she's still employed. She just, and
Yes.
it sounds like she's just a normal blue-collar worker.
Yes, so she's got a salary,
Yeah.
which is taxable
Yeah.
at her salary rate.
Yeah.
She's got a pension taxable in terms of how much the pension she's getting. Come the end of the year, she puts those two together. If she's earning if there's any capital she inherited from her husband, and she's going to pay, and she's earned interest, she's going to pay tax. Collect all those things together, and suddenly you find in a completely different band, and you have underpaid tax. And you know, we've got the 29th of February, the taxes have to be paid. Your second provisional payment has to be paid by next Thursday. And remember, you can't pay next Thursday because it won't reflect in the receiver's offices, and you can't buy retirement annuities next week because, again, the companies have to make sure the contract is in place.
So if we
You've got
want
to do
to
something.
contribute
You've got to
towards
start doing things
the
this
retirement
week. Yeah.
annuity lump
Yeah.
sum, you've got until
Yeah.
the end of the week.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, so as you heard, then just contact Brian and he will be able to assist with specifics. And this is particularly for the widow and many others like her who are dealing with these frustrations around tax. Okay, so what is the other thing that we needed to touch on before we move on, Brian? Two-pot system.
Yep.
A debate in Parliament on
Yep.
the two-pot system. That's this afternoon, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
no, isn't it tomorrow?
Is it tomorrow?
What's tomorrow?
Tomorrow is Wednesday.
The budget.
No, but there's also a debate on the
Oh.
two-pot system
Oh, well,
in
I don't-
Parliament this week.
Well, I don't know what the debate is, because it's been agreed that it's going to be implemented on the 1st of September, where individuals will be able to take monies from their retirement funds, whether it be a retirement annuity, whether it be a pension, or whether it be a provident fund. They would take 1/3 of those funds and put it into what's called a savings pot. You will be able to draw 10% of that savings pot at this point in time with a maximum of 30,000 Rand, and then on a yearly basis 2,000 Rand. But remember, anything you draw under the two-pot system will be taxed at your marginal rate, and that's what we were talking about. So if this widow decides to take money out of the retirement fund, that money is going to be added to all her other income, and she's going to pay tax at the higher level. So you need to have a look. I may be taking money out, but you know, if you're in a maximum tax bracket of 45% and you take out 30,000 Rand, you're going to pay 45% of that to which the tax on 45% on 30,000 is 13,500.
You might as well not have.
So you need to think carefully, and you need to engage with a financial planner. Pay them for their time, or if you make an investment, get your let them earn their 0.5%. It's well worth it to help you get through and to really understand what you need to do. But the two-pot system that may be debated, I'm not sure, because
So here's what they're debating,
what
Brian.
are they debating?
They're debating the Revenue Laws Amendment Bill, which is going to provide for the two-pot system. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
but all the understandings, all the arrangements are in place. The delay is because, every company has to have everything in place. All the pension fund rules have to be changed. They have to be registered, and it does take time. I don't need to tell you, regulatory issues take a lot more time than just you and I contracting. So, and it will be effective the 1st of September.
Okay, so then on the question of tax, I'm seeing your questions already coming in for Brian and your WhatsApp voice notes. So I'll be taking those after the 10:30 news headlines. Of course, you can send your WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107, and I'll take your calls on 086 000 2032. But Brian, before we get into the news headlines, please explain how provisional tax works in a simple way. That's a question from one of our listeners.
Well, you've got to work out what you've earned that's taxable income during this year. So let's assume you add in your interest that you've earned, you add in your salary, the widow's had a pension, there may have been some sales of some investments which created capital gains tax, you get to a lump sum. And let's say the lump sum is 360,000 Rand. You've then got to have a look at what taxes have been deducted, either by way of PAYE, or if you're a contractor, deduction of 25%, and you've got to say, I've underpaid the receiver of revenue 62,000 Rand. Then the next question is, did you make any provisional payments in August? Because in August we have two times. There's August and February. Did you pay in August? If you paid 42,000 in August, your shortfall is 20. You then need to make a payment to the receiver of revenue by the end of February. I'm not sure of the amount, but if you underpay taxes up to, I think it may be 10%. If you've underpaid, there will be no penalty. You may be charged interest for not having paid it when you submit your tax return, but just speak to who's ever doing your tax return, your e-filing, and to find out, do you owe any money for this year that you can make in a payment before next Friday.
Nothing stresses me out more than those messages from the tax man.
Yeah.
You have a notice that has been issued.
Yeah.
You just know stress on the
No,
way.
no, not always. I mean, funny enough, a client of mine sent me this notice in panic, and it said within 21 days you're going to be getting a refund. You mustn't get a fright from revenue. Revenue get the information.
All they do is just take.
And by the way, the revenue officers are there to help the public. If you've got a problem, you can go to a revenue office in your area, and you will get help. They are most helpful if you've got a problem and you don't know what's going on.
All right. So let's go to news. It's 10:30. I'm going to continue with Brian and, of course, all of the questions you're sending through for him.
Thanks, Cathy. A very good morning. With the news headlines, Kemudupi Makhalemele. Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says the late registration of births continues to be a major issue in the Eastern Cape. The DA says it does not believe that any of the plans outlined by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi during his State of the Province address will materialize. And the High Court in London is today due to hear the latest bid by WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to avoid extradition to the US on espionage charges. Details of these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 19 rand 3 cents to the dollar, 23 rand 95 to the pound, and 20 rand 51 to the euro. Markets in Asia are closed mixed. The JSE is low in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are flat this hour. Gold is trading at $2,021, platinum $898 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $83.60 a barrel.
The cost of living crisis is real. Here's what one Outsurance client did about it.
I'm Amy. I'm 26 from Kenilworth. When I got my 2022 Ford EcoSport, the immediate thought was to phone Outsurance, and I pay only 819 Rand per month. No insurers were able to beat or match the premium that I'm currently paying.
Want a car insurance premium that will blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote and to find out about included benefits like panic assistance that sends the nearest medical or armed response unit to you wherever you may be 24/7. Here's Yusuf.
45 years old from Tygertal, Western Cape. I pay 700 Rand for my Polo 1.6 2021 model. If you haven't called Outsurance yet, definitely get in touch.
Give it a go. SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's, and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyalobuga.
Siyabulela nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to McDonald's for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asonye. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. We're talking finance with Brian, and you, of course, get to ask him all of the questions you have. This is around your personal finance matters. So, Brian, I'm going to kick it off with some of our WhatsApp voice notes. They came through so much earlier in the hour, and then I'll switch to the calls that we're getting on our studio line.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to Brian. Cathy, I just want to check with Brian actually about the wisdom of keeping the bond open even after one has paid up the bond. Is there wisdom in doing that, particularly when one might not be having any desire to extend the bond, or even to take another building loan or something? I don't know if this is advisable or somehow it might be detrimental to the customer. This is Junior in Tabancho. Thank you very much.
Okay, Junior, keeping a bond open means probably that your fire insurance on your property is held by the bondholder. And they have no more vested interest in the value of the property because the loan's paid off. So when you talk about detrimental, the only area of detrimental, a point that I can think of, is to make sure your house is fully insured for replacement value in the event of a fire, not in terms of what the current market value is, because today market value is a lot lower than the replacement value. Talking about keeping a bond open, I've always advised clients, what is the cost of keeping that bond open? Because there is when you close a bond, there's cancellation and there are bond fees, and you never know. It's always good to have that buffer that you can, if you ever run into, people always say emergency funds, if you ever run into a problem, that you can reinstate part of the loan. But you need to check with the institution, which is important, is if you want to reinstate the loan under the bond, what will they require? Or is it a simple formality of just asking for monies? Will they require now under the latest story with the department, my mind went blank there for a second. We've all got to go through the National Credit Act, the national regulator. What will they require? Just check with your bond and check what the cost is. And if there's not much cost to holding that bond open, it's a facility. If you've got an overdraft facility, you pay your bank a facility fee on a monthly or yearly basis. So it's just another avenue where you could, if you've got a business project or an investment you want to make, that you could use that bond. So it's a facility which I like, but find out what the cost is.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian. Another question says, good day. I started an RA in 2006. I left the country 2 years ago. I stopped contributing 2 years ago. It is with Old Mutual. Can I get any money back? I heard I need to be out of the country for a certain period. What is the best way forward?
Yes, you can. If you've been out of the country and you're a non-taxpayer, you can certainly cash in your retirement annuities, after 3 years that you've been out of the country. So it's a simple rule. 3 years out as a non-South African taxpayer, you can then export the capital. The funds will be treated on the withdrawal tables, which means there will be tax payable on the fund, because if you understand, when you made the contribution to the retirement, you got a full tax deduction, and I've been talking about that for the last few weeks, that it came off your taxable income. So in other words, you saved what was called marginal rates of tax, not average. Let me just explain one thing. If you earn 200,000 and you pay 20,000 rands worth of tax, you're paying an average of 10%. That's average. But marginal means if I earn 2,000 and I get another 100 rand, how much tax will I pay on that 100 rand? So when you're looking to save tax, it's at that level, not on the average of what you pay.
Okay.
It's actually at the top high level. So yes, to this caller, you can withdraw the funds after 3 years if you've been if you're out of the tax net.
Hi, Cathy. 2 questions for Brian, maybe just purely academic, but why is it that you can't take inflation into account when calculating capital gains? You know, because your gain is obviously not as large as you're charged for. And then the second thing, when the Reserve Bank raises interest rates to combat inflation, where does that extra money go? Because you're basically just taking money out of our pockets so that we don't have money to spend on goods, but someone's getting that money. Who gets it?
Well, let me answer the first question. The first question is the capital gains. Yeah, capital gains is a percentage, 40% of the gain is added to your taxable income. And as your taxable income rises, so the capital gains level gets greater. The lowest capital gains tax you could end up paying is 4.5%, and the highest is 18%. There is no inflation hedging. There is no amount. You know, at the moment, you get 40,000 rand if you, on a yearly basis, as a deduction from any capital gain. It's not the tax, it's the amount. So if your capital gain in a particular year is 200,000, you will get 40,000 off. That's the only place they could do something about it, as you talked about. That hasn't changed for a few years, and that's hedging inflation. The second point is you make, when interest rates rise, if you've got debt, you're paying it to the institution, because the institution are borrowing money from the Reserve Bank at a higher rate, and they're passing that on to you. So our repo rate is 8.25, our prime rate is 11.75, 3.5% higher. So what's happening is, when, you know, for those who don't, in other words, if you don't, when they raise interest rates and you don't have any debt, then you're getting the advantage of high interest rates from your investments. I mean, we were getting in money market accounts 2 years ago 4%. You're now getting anything between 8 and 9, and there've been 1 or 2 institutions who are offering even 10.5%. I always say, and when I say at some institution, I know ABSA is one of them. I'd have no problem putting some money with ABSA at 10.5%. But when I start hearing about companies I've never heard of, I say the greater the return, the greater the risk. But coming back to your point, so when you say where does that money go, the Reserve Bank takes money out of circulation, but the banks or any other financial institutions charge you more because they're having to pay more for money that they're borrowing from the Reserve Bank.
All right, we're going to continue the conversation with Brian after this quick break.
Sure, girl, this Ford Puma, love the interior. And how about its award-winning engine and selectable drive modes? From only $7,899 per month with 0% deposit, primeless 5.5%, and a driver assistance pack included.
Sure, get more with the new Ford Puma Titanium from only $7,899 per month.
Visit your nearest Ford dealer today. T&Cs apply.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyabulela
nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Cote d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms, and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Hollywood Bets for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, we continue the conversation with Brian. Let me go to our phone lines. Anonymous, you're calling us from Johannesburg. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Cathy. Good morning, Brian. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. All the best to you.
Good, good. Listen, Brian, so I've got a quick question with regards to interest hikes that's been going on for the past year. I just want to know, my wife and I, we are in a situation where everything has just kind of become a bit much, and we haven't fallen behind on our debt per se. But now, because there's not much left at the end of the month, the question is, I've been advised by the financial advisor that I can go to the bank and apply for another loan on top of my loan and then consolidate the debt, pay that off at a lower interest, and then go forward that way, obviously being disciplined. Is that a advisable thing to do?
Well, it's always advisable to get rid of unhealthy debt. So when you talk about unsecured lending, when you talk about credit card debt, when you talk about store debt, or even talk about overdraft debt, yes, certainly better. And are you saying, are you indicating that you should increase, raise funds on your bond, on a bond?
That is correct, because I've put in like a lucrative amount of deposit onto the bond. So I've got a lot of excess money that's in the account there. But obviously, I want to know if I can take from that, and how would it impact me should I want to buy a house in a couple of months down from today?
Okay, you need to understand that the last thing you want to do is turn what we call short-term borrowings into long-term borrowings. So when you've got unsecured and your credit card, but if you go to and you increase your bond and you pay off all the other debt, certainly at the higher interest rates, and then the money that you were paying to all these institutions, you start putting back into your bond. So whatever you've taken out of the bond, you get rid of that debt, that extra debt within 3 to 4 years. Then I'm very comfortable for you to do that. But if you're going to increase your bond and then start paying off over the next 15 to 20 years, it becomes expensive debt. So certainly using your bond and being able to access funds to pay off more expensive debt, prize one, and prize two is now, you don't just pay what the bondholder wants you to pay, because it may not be very much smaller, because you're only going to pay for the bond for much longer. Rather, increase the amount that you're putting back into the bond. So if you've taken 200,000 out of your bond and you want to pay, you at least pay that back over the next 4 to 5 years. It may not help you immediately, but it will certainly help you in the long term. And you did make the comment, which I take seriously, where you said at the end of the month there's a little left. At least there's a little left, because in most people's case there's nothing left and there's just more debt.
Yeah. Okay. No, 100%. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thanks for your call.
All right, Anonymous, all the best, eh? Brian, I've got a question here on the WhatsApp line. It says, how does one reduce estate duty?
Okay, well, remember, estate duty, just to share with you, there's an abatement that each party gets. They get 3.5 million rand each. So each spouse gets 3.5 million rands worth of death duties. We call it estate duty, death duties. Other parts of the world is called inheritance tax. You get the first 3.5 million free of death duties if the funds are going to anyone other than a spouse. If it's going to a spouse, then there's the rollover and there is no death duties paid until the death of the second party, and then you won't get only the 3.5, you'll get 7 million. So when you want to increase estate duty, there are two ways of doing it. The one is you need to think very carefully before you do it, and that's when you donate or you sell the assets into a trust. The trust then owes you the money if they growth assets, as the growth in the trust occurs, that is not part of money owed to you. So let's give you an example. I take 3 million rand, I sell it to a trust, owes me 3 million rand, and now in 20 years' time, that 3 million rand is worth 10 million. The 7 million that has grown in the trust will be free of estate duty, but the 3 million owed to you. That's the one way. And then on a yearly basis, families can donate 100,000 rand in each taxpayer, 100,000 rand to families or again to that trust, and that will be not treated as donations tax, because donations tax above 100,000 is treated at the same rate that death duties and again or estate duty is levied. I'm just using, because I sometimes use estate duty, sometimes inheritance tax. It's all the same. So you can reduce your tax, your assets by 100,000 rand a year by donating that to children, to education, to putting into investment fund. Other than that, you've also got to look carefully at your will, who's inheriting from you. And remember, any asset that belongs to you, whether it be onshore, offshore, other than retirement funds. Another way of saving for estate duty is putting money into retirement funds, because retirement funds are exempt from estate duty. So those are the basic, I'm just given a basic overview. Don't just take what I've said. If you're going to do anything like that, you need to talk to professionals who understand trusts. You need to talk to your accountants and understand, because there are certain considerations that are negative for trusts. So it's not, I see people all the time come and see me, they've got trusts, they never put anything into a trust, they bought a trust, they paid legal fees, they've never used a trust. A trust can be used sensibly, but only in certain circumstances.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian. More WhatsApp voice note questions for you.
Dumelang house Cathy Ndate Brian, SA retail bond, how reliable is it? Because I was there mid-December going to get information. When I get there, there was this big black guy. He just come with a laptop and talk to you and ask you how much do you want to invest, blah, blah, blah. Now, the thing that I was not impressed about, he just print there the papers and give you the reference number, said, here is the banks, they use all the banks. Here is the bank account, you can deposit the money there, then we will approve your investment. So my question is SA Retail Bond the company, if I may call it so, which a man can go for? Thank you, Skosana Bloemfontein.
Look, your explanation, your explanation, someone came out of the bank, very simply, if you go on to SA Retail Bonds online, you will see what bank accounts you can transfer money to. As long as that's the bank account that is shown under government retail bonds, then I don't think you need to fear. I think government retail bonds for people who don't have taxable income. They were paying, and just to let you know, last year, if you went into a 5-year retail bond, you got 11.75% for 5 years. The rate's already coming down. Today, the rate is 10% this month. Every month it changes. So, if you're going to buy a government retail bond, go online. Get someone else to help you to go online. They will direct you how to go about it. Make sure you transfer the money to the account reflected. You can always contact them. There's a number you can contact to confirm. And I always say to people, be careful of someone hacking and getting hold of an email and changing their account number. Always check when you're making a transfer to any institution that you've checked with that institution by phone again to make sure no one is hacked. And so, people who are buying property and having to pay when the property is registered, there have been so many frauds where they get letters from accountants or letters from the lawyer saying, please transfer the money. Someone's hacked the lawyer's account or your account and they've given the wrong account number. So always check on the account number. Am I happy with government retail bonds? Very happy, but you need to have a look very much at what your taxable income is, because if you're getting a 10% 5-year government retail bond and your taxable income is 40%, you're only getting a net rate of 6%. How does that compare to other investments that you maybe could get at 6 or 7%, other investments? Because a 5-year investment in a government retail bond is a long term, and you can start thinking of other avenues how to invest over a 5-year period.
All right, Brian, when we come back, I've got some questions about investment adverts and Elon Musk. We'll also, of course, take more of the questions that you've sent through, including questions on how to reduce tax. All right, all of that coming up after this break.
The Red Devils have a responsibility to ensure there's happiness at Old Trafford.
Swung in dangerously. What a header. Scott McTominay.
However, the cottagers have an agenda to disrupt that plan.
Swings it in. There it is. It's 3-1. It's Rodrigo Muniz again.
This is the Premier League. Manchester United FC faces Fulham FC on Saturday, 24 February at 4:30 p.m. Live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Talking Finance with Brian Hirsch, making sense of your finance.
All right, we continue the conversation on the Talking Point. Let me continue with the questions. There we go. This one is linked, is about PayPal. I don't know how much you know about PayPal, Brian, but here we go.
Good morning, guys. Brian, I just need advice, man. I need to find out which company is hooked, bank is linked to PayPal. It's an overseas-based company. A guy has sent me dollars. Now I need to link a bank account, so I'm not too sure which bank is linked with PayPal.
I'm sorry, I can't answer on that one at all. But if they've sent you dollars, have they sent you dollars to a an account? Oh, is that a caller? Okay. Look, I really don't know. I tell you what I will do. I will attempt to find out about if dollars in a PayPal account. I did get a refund myself a couple of years ago in a PayPal account. I have no idea how that money was then transferred to my own account. I will make inquiries and see whether I can get any information, which I'll share if I get answers next Tuesday.
All right.
Good morning, Osketi. Good morning, Brian. So, on the National Bargain Council of the Road Freight, does that mean when your contract has ended with a certain company, you can no longer take that money that is in the bargain council, that provident fund? So, does that mean they will give you half of your money or 10%, whatever 10% is? What are you going to do with that money? It's so little, you can't even finish your house, you can't pay up your bond. What is this? Aye, man.
Okay, well, I hear your anxiety, your frustration. Look, I'm not sure on the bargaining council, because the bargaining councils have their own rules and regulations governing their pension funds. You know, commercial funds, if you leave a fund, you can withdraw the funds. And I don't know whether you're locked into the bargaining council. Let me make some inquiries. I was involved with a bargaining council 25 years ago. It was the Clothing Industry Bargaining Council. Let me find out what members can do. I would imagine that all bargaining councils are regulated by the same rules, and I, again, on next Tuesday, will give an answer.
All right. Thanks for that, Brian. And then I've got a question here that our listener wants to know, what is your view of the adverts on internet about investments as announced by Elon Musk? It's from Anonymous.
Stay away.
You didn't have to think about it. You did not even think about it, Brian.
Stay away.
Okay. Let's go for this question here.
Princess Cathy, are you well? Good morning to you. Good morning to your team in the studio. Good morning to all our SFM listeners. Not forgetting the legend, Brian. Brian, thanks very much. I keep on saying thank you. My issue and SARS was issued. I don't owe SARS anything. But I would like to ask, Brian, how do I check that my money which I'm being taxed from my company is getting through? Because some of the tax which my company is just deducting, I'm not understanding if it's going through straight to the SARS.
Well, you get a tax certificate at the end of each financial year, and there it reflects your salary. Look, your company shows what taxes are being paid across. It's unlikely, but you do get the odd company that doesn't pay the taxes over in time, doesn't make pension fund contributions on time, and even don't pay VAT according to the timelines that they have. But, you can't, if you're working for a reputable company, a company that you don't really need to be concerned. If they're deducting tax, the chances are it's been paid over. And you can always go to Revenue. I've said to you, the Revenue are very, very helpful, and you can go there and just find out, ask someone to speak to you about your taxes, and just see that your taxes are in order. They'll pick it up very, very quickly. But if it's a reputable company, it's unlikely they're not paying it over.
I've gotten so many responses to the question about PayPal, and it looks like FNB is the bank to go to. So FNB, the number of people who are saying that they've been able to withdraw money from the FNB from FNB Bank. Sharon says that FNB is the bank that she's used to withdraw the dollars in SA. It's very quick and efficient, and I've got at least 5 other messages that are linking PayPal to the
Thank you
FNB,
to all of you, and thank you to Sharon. Yeah. I wonder when I'm going to get a call saying I've received Bitcoin, and where can I cash my Bitcoin in? Which bank? But certainly, thank you, Sharon.
Well, Brian, since you asked for it, here's a question for you. What happens to Bitcoin in a deceased estate? Well, you asked for it, Brian.
10:58. We used to have a show on radio which was called the Quiz Kids, where you put questions to the Quiz Kids to try and stump them. Someone phones me at 10:58 and says Bitcoin, a deceased estate. Look, obviously, if it's in a wallet, the executor will be able to actually sell that Bitcoin. They are saleable in those particular, whichever wallet is. I don't understand the wallets. I know there's Luna and various others, but if a Bitcoin, the problem is so often people will never record their Bitcoin in a state, and you may never find that your family member even had a Bitcoin. So I think what's important.
They don't.
Yes. So
Why
I think
not?
I think because it's all, and I don't know, it's just a strange investment. And let me give some advice to anyone who knows that their family member's got a Bitcoin. Get all the details so you've got it on file. So if that person does pass on, then at least you know where the Bitcoin are. But in this particular case, the executor will deal with the organization that holds that Bitcoin, and then they will actually, you have a right to either keep that Bitcoin as having inherited it, or cash it in. It will form part of your estate. The reason people don't do it is because it's secretly, it's not, any asset you have is part of your estate, other than retirement funds. They do not form part of your estate. So that's a good estate duty saving. But a Bitcoin will be added to estate, and people have made a lot of money on Bitcoins, and they don't want to pay estate duty.
Yeah.
So just get details so you don't lose out.
Okay. All right, Brian. Brings us to the end of our show today. So next week, I think what we need to do as we kickstart a brand new month is perhaps just get a sense of what's happening, locally, markets, globally, and just what we should brace ourselves
and
for the year
talk about
ahead.
AGOA, because I think that is an issue. I bumped this person yesterday, and I'll find out more details from them. What the expectations are. I'll talk to some of the economists, and I'm going to get out of the studio before I get another call about Bitcoin and I look like a real fool. But then I've always said, you can never ask a stupid question. You can only get a stupid.
We all know that Bitcoin is your absolute favorite subject in the whole wide world.
Have a great week. I'm getting out of here.
Bye, Brian. It's 11 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
The top stories this hour: late birth registrations, a major challenge for Home Affairs, and Lesotho commits to training more artisans. A very good morning. Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says the late registration of births continues to be a major issue in the Eastern Cape. He visited Gqeberha, where he engaged New Brighton locals on issues relating to his department. The minister told them that the processes involved with late birth registrations are lengthy. He says direct registration services are available at certain hospitals to ensure that newborns are registered as soon as possible.
Home Affairs is a key department. There are not many things you can do in South Africa if Home Affairs is not working. At school, going to a police station, going to the bank, going to SASA, Department of Housing, human settlements and all that. you need to be identified. For that reason, it's important for people to understand how this identification goes about.
The DA says it does not believe that any of the plans outlined by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi during his State of the Province address will materialize. The party was one of many others who lambasted Lesufi's SOPA, saying it was just an election campaign speech. The DA's Gauteng Premier candidate, Solim Simang.
I can't say that we are disappointed because we know that we were not going to be told anything, and indeed, that's what Panyaza did. I urge any of you to go and read last year's statement by Panyaza Lesufi. Have a copy of what he says to us this year. He speaks about, what he's still going to do. He's not telling us what he has done. He's telling us about Mapanyaza. But that is not a good record to tell us about. The good record would be to then say, what is the latest crime statistics telling us about their impact on Gauteng? Crime has gone up. Murder has gone up in Gauteng.
The Gauteng government is promising to train 40,000 unemployed people in the townships with artisanal skills. Lesufi says that almost 3.2 billion rand has been set aside for this project.
We are going to train them to be artisans. We are going to train them to be electricians. We are going to train them to be electricians. We are going to train all people that are unemployed. We've made an agreement with TVET colleges and skills development centers so that all people that don't have skills in the township, we can train them, we can give them a stipend, and they can come and improve our township as part of our development in this area.
The Groblersdal Magistrates Court in Limpopo has sentenced a pensioner to 20 years imprisonment for raping a minor. The 68-year-old was found guilty of raping his 7-year-old stepdaughter in March last year. The court has heard that the minor was raped multiple times when her mother was not in the house. The SPCA says some of the cattle on board a docked vessel at the Cape Town harbour had to be euthanized. A foul odour hangs over the city from the docked cattle carrier. The vessel is carrying 19,000 cattle. The NSPCA and the Cape of Good Hope SPCA are actively engaged on the Al Kuwait. The ship is in the process of loading feed and is carrying the cattle bound for Iraq from Brazil. Here's the SPCA's Jack Peacock.
We do confirm that at least 5 animals have to be euthanized due to the extent of their disease and injuries. We are still waiting a full report from our team on the ground as they really are busy inspecting and don't necessarily have the time to give us real-time updates. It's also incredibly difficult to communicate from the ship due to the noise. It is extremely loud in the ship as well. So we will be having a debriefing and get more information.
And the High Court in London is today due to hear the latest bid by the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange to avoid extradition to the US on espionage charges. Assange is wanted in the US for leaking classified military documents. The BBC's Nikki Shields has more.
In 2010 and 2011, Julian Assange published thousands of classified military documents. American authorities say he broke the law and endangered lives. For the past 5 years, the WikiLeaks founder has been fighting extradition on espionage charges. In 2021, the High Court ruled that he should be extradited, and the Supreme Court upheld that decision a year later. Mr. Assange is now seeking permission to review that decision and to try to challenge the original ruling. He insists the case against him is politically motivated.
Recapping the top story, Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says the late registration of births continues to be a major issue in the Eastern Cape. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemele.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365, Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Former Proteas wicketkeeper and the cricket coach for Queen's College, Mangi Mosehle. What makes it so much tougher to play the longer version of the game compared to white ball cricket?
It's definitely obviously more the mental application to, as I said, obviously, and how much you trade when it comes to like a longer format of the game. So let's go with the tempo of the game. The game always dictates what's required. So if you look at T20 and one-day cricket, tempo is almost the same. So there's stages where you have to consolidate to bring the rate down, or you have to press when you're batting. So it's very different.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We're leading the conversation on SAFM. It's 8 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of the show. What you can expect in this hour, we are focusing on gender-based violence and part of what we see as a government's approach to fighting GBV. How do we move beyond just the rhetoric that often and the lip service that often is paid to this conversation? And what we're going to do is that we're going to look at what has come out of the State of the Province's addresses so far. Yesterday, we had the Western Cape Premier, Alan Winde, and the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi, deliver the State of their Province addresses. And in both speeches, unfortunately, very little was said by both premiers on their fight against gender-based violence and what they're going to be doing provincially to try and deal with this problem. Joining us for this conversation is CEO of Soul City, Fina Nkadimeng. Good morning. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Cathy. It's Fina Kodisang, actually.
Oh, I don't know why I said Nkadimeng Fina. I apologize for that. I'm not sure where it came from because it's written correctly in front of me. My mind is doing its own thing. Fina Kodisang, apologies for that, Fina. And Estelle Otto is policy developer on GBV in the Gauteng Department of Social Development. Estelle, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
And Tembelihle Madi is a senior trainer on GBV at Sonke Gender Justice. Tembelihle, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, and thank you for being part of this conversation. So what I want us to do is to listen to the State of the Province addresses that were delivered yesterday in Gauteng and in the Western Cape. And this is what both premiers had to say about gender-based violence. We're going to play the clips for you. And when I say that this is what they had to say, I mean, in the entire speech, this is what they said. So we didn't cut part of it and leave another part out. No, this is all they had to say on GBV. Let's kick it off with the Gauteng Premier, Panyaza Lesufi.
We are now increasing our support on gender-based violence. The government that I have the honor to lead has donated 31 new cars to the Sexual Offensives Unit of the South African Police Service so that all our women must feel safe in our province, and any woman that is attacked, the police must have dedicated cars to go and defend our women and children in our province. We've concluded the process of identifying safe houses for our women and our children so that our province can be safe.
All right, so that was the Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi. Here's what Alan Winde had to say.
Talking about some of the most vulnerable citizens in our province, those that suffer GBV. We have 8 Tutuzela centres across the province, with a centre a centre that's been expanded at Victoria Hospital, and we're busy expanding another centre in Stellenbosch. We have 26 GBV shelters across this province, the 27th in planning in the Overberg region. We have GBV ambassadors in every single one of our departments. And Speaker, over 18,000 citizens have received psychosocial support from Tutuzela care centres and DSD-supported GBV shelters in the last 5 years. And we have again been busy expanding our social worker workforce. We are adding, as we speak, another 247 special service social workers to continue with this work. We need to make sure that child protection and the protection of our most vulnerable is front and centre. And these social workers are really special people.
All right. Fina Kodisang, let me perhaps kick it off with you. That is, at least when you look at the 2 economic centres of the country, how the premiers are planning to deal with issues of gender-based violence, at least as tabled in their State of the Province address. Your impressions?
So it's it's very sad, Cathy, that even when we listen to the president, it's still not clear in terms of what is the blueprint of South Africa in addressing what 51% of its population is put under, because 51% of South Africa's population is women, right? And so if you listen to Premier Lesufi speaking, and he went on and on about economic development and all the things that he's dreaming of, bringing into Gauteng, that he missed the vital component of what will make those economic developments thrive, the women of this province. Because once you leave them out by not addressing the thing that makes them not to be economically active, which is GBV, you are already saying, I'm not developing this economy for you if you are not going to address GBV as one of the things, and femicide as one of the things that women are suffering from, because we know that once they are abused, some of them leave work, some die, they don't have the necessary psychosocial support that is needed, and they enter into depression and all the other things that come as a result of gender-based violence that is not addressed. So it's clear that somebody in the Western Cape understands what it entails, because they went into breaking down how many Tutuzela care centers they have, which is what we need to hear in Gauteng, because I stay in Gauteng. So I need to know, if I fall victim to rape today, where do I go? Where are the Tutuzela care centers? How many are functioning? How many, are meeting the need? If there's a shortage, are you planning to increase them? In terms of even noting the number of women that you have that are already reporting GBV in your province, that shows the interest. But I'm disappointed. In fact, yesterday as we were listening, I was saying to my daughter, I think the Premier forgot that he's not campaigning for voting right now. He's actually telling us the state of the province. And as a woman, what I want to hear as a citizen of the province is, where is help? Where do I get help? Where do I go? Instead of knowing what is planned, all these other things that he was mentioning.
Tembelihle, have we gotten back to a point where the conversation and really the impetus to mobilize resources, mobilize conversation in government around gender-based violence, where that has regressed yet again, where it's no longer actually a key issue on the agenda?
It definitely has shown a lot of regression, Cathy. When you look at even the priorities for the country, it doesn't seem that once upon a time in 2020, GBV was a pandemic. And when has GBV stopped being a pandemic? When we still have in a quarter 10,000 rape cases. And so that it's like a sign that the government is like, okay, this is an issue. They threw, some amendment acts at us. They threw the NSP at us, and then they just walked away and said, then civil society must then, sort it out. And so it's very concerning to see that the responsibility of curbing this gender-based violence issue has now fallen on civil society. And even the realities, even that is not even meeting the realities on the ground. The government is not meeting the realities on the ground. The Premier of Gauteng is talking about the 31 new cars that have been donated. But if you talk to community members in the communities, they will tell you that these 31 new cars, when I call and say, listen, I need assistance, my husband is beating me up, the 31 cars that have been donated are nowhere to be found. And women are found wanting there and stuck in those situations where they're being sent from pillar to post. So there's just a very huge disconnect from what the government is saying and what they're actually doing. Like you were saying, it's a lot of lip service that's happening. And we got excited when the NSP was happening, but even the localization of the NSP, the premiers don't know the NSP, the station commanders don't know the NSP. Talking about even the Domestic Violence Amendment Act, that is speaking directly to domestic violence and how these issues should be addressed from government level, from police, to psychosocial support and all of that. None of the implementation is happening. So it's very disappointing to hear them not really prioritizing women, and as we were once upon a time a priority for them, and now it's not. And you look at it even in budgeting, when the DSD is now saying they're pulling funding from a lot of organizations that were actually helping domestic violence survivors, to deal, either whether it was psychosocial support or supporting them in some other way, and they're cutting that funding. What message is it sending to women that they are on their own?
Estelle, as somebody who is within government and also in a crucial department like that of social development, what is your impression of the coordination when it comes to gender-based violence programs, but also just policy initiatives? Thembelihle talks about the NSP, and it took so much work to develop that national strategic framework. But now we don't get the sense that it's actually materializing into something worthwhile. The momentum has just been absorbed and slowed down by red tape, by bureaucracy. Why? Why is that happening?
Femicide prevention is a pandemic. It is definitely a priority for all the government departments. There is an implementation plan that is spearheaded by the Department of Community Safety, and every single government department is part of that plan. So I think as a community, when you experience gender-based violence, the first place that you would go is the police. That is where we get help from. So there we've got NGOs or non-government organizations that is linked to the victim-friendly room. So when a victim goes to the police station, to the front desk, they will be directed to the victim-friendly room, where there will be services to the victim, that is just more friendly. And then the police is also activated. Each police station has a victim coordinator. So I think those structures are definitely in place. Secondly, you've spoken about the Thuthuzela Care Center, which means comfort. So if a victim has the injury because of gender-based violence or has been raped, where would you go? You usually go to your government hospital or to a private hospital. So those Tutuzela care centers, you've got a whole team of people that is connected to the casualty unit. So it's a specific unit at your Baragwanath Hospital, Tele Mokhurani, Tembisa Hospital, etc. So a whole team of people is then available. It is your forensic nurse. It is your forensic doctor that will immediately be called. There's even a lawyer there that works for the NPA, National Prosecuting Authority, that will make sure that your case is very strong when it goes to court. So I think in Gauteng we've got 7 Tutuzela care centers, and we are also working with other partners like your Nakosa, where we also have the centers in the Western. So every region really has these Tutuzela care centers. Then we've got the shelters for abused women, where a woman will go if she is really unsafe, and she will go with her children. And then a lot of people don't know that we actually have a shelter for abused men, because, it's not only about physical abuse. Sometimes, men are also abused in other ways. It can be physically as well. That if a man also needs protection, there is a shelter for men. And then, like someone has also mentioned, the clip, that we've got gender-based violence units in the Department of Social Development, and anyone that needs counseling. Because it's not only about the woman that is abused in a house or in a family. It's also the effect on the children that witness the violence. So most definitely we've got a number of NGOs as well that is working with us, but we also have the Department of Social Development.
Estelle, how do you track progress? So I know that, at some point, in terms of coordinating the government efforts when it comes to gender-based violence, every department was given a mandate to sort of say, this is the programs that they will be running, and et cetera, et cetera. But what has happened in the last couple of years is that there's been no clear picture emerging from departments on, number one, the programs they've been running that are gender-based violence related, the budget that they are spending towards these programs, and the effect or the impact of these programs. The monitoring around it, the last time I checked, was just very, very poor.
Yes, I think when the program started in 2020, or the strategy, like you've said, it's a 10-year program to end gender-based violence. So the Department of Community has actually started with weekly war room meetings. And in those meetings, all the government departments, together with civil society, has identified the blockages, the challenges, etc. And for each of the blockages, let's say that SAP said that, they don't have enough crime kits, or it takes long for evidence to come back to court. So for everything that was mentioned, there is a plan, there is a remedy. And every department has to give a monthly report on the NSP to the Department of Community Safety, which goes to the Premier. So, we've identified what the gaps are, and we have also identified what we need to do. And there are so many programs, awareness programs, that everybody is doing, all the government departments. But like you say, what is the impact? And I think that is where Premier has gone into the economic development part of it, because, yes, the social development, we can do awareness. And for 16 days, we've spoken to 1,400,000 people in Gauteng, just for 16 days, That excludes your 365 days. So we've done the prevention. But because women in many situations in communities are financially dependent on the perpetrator, And it is one of the big reasons that they stay in this relationship, or they feel, but what about the children? School fees, transport to school. So I think speaking about economic development, not only of women, also men, also the youth, is very important, because we can do all the skills development, we can do all the information to say, you've got the right to safety, you've got the right not to be abused. But as long as you don't have skills, as long as you are economically dependent on somebody, you're going to stay in that relationship. Or even if you go to the shelter for abused women, you go back, because where else are you going to go? So I'm totally in favor of the economic development, because then we have impact. So what we have also done for social development is we said, let's make funds available for our shelters, for the women in the shelter to develop themselves. Maybe get your learner's license, maybe get your license so that you can have an opportunity in the work market. Do entrepreneurship, start your own business so that you also have money. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have money in a relationship, you will be dependent on someone. So I agree, the impact is extremely important. We can talk and talk, but what is it that we do?
All right. Thanks for that, Estelle. Estelle is a policy developer on GBV in the Gauteng Department of Social Development. Fina, what do you have to say to that? Is Estelle right that it's not so much that nothing is happening? In fact, there are updates, and the problem doesn't just begin and end with awareness campaigns?
It cannot begin and end with awareness campaign, I agree. But the biggest issue is accountability. And I think this is what we are trying to address in what happened at the SOPA. We didn't see accountability from the Premier in saying, we are aware that in Gauteng, this is what is happening in terms of GBV. If he's receiving all the reports that Estelle is mentioning, it would have been good to hear him reflect on the status of GBV in as far as what the war rooms are reporting to him, that, this is what is happening. We know that people come to us and tell us that they still go to police stations and they still can't open cases. And I know, because I'm part of the war room discussions, I see some of the challenges. You still have court dates that are moved from one date to another, and justice delayed is justice denied. We still have a lack of evidence that is collected correctly by police when they go on site to collect evidence. So there are a lot of things that are not happening correctly in as far as handling cases. December, we were hearing reports around the GBV hotline or the command center not functioning as it should. These are things that we need assurance when we give a status of the province to say, we are making sure that the command center works as it should, it's operational, as it should operate, and guaranteeing everyone, women of this province, that they will get the service when they need it. We can say we have 7 Thuthuzela care centers on paper, but do they function as they should? Because the reports that we hear report different things. So it's one thing that, there's something written on paper and it's beautiful on paper, but it's another that lived realities of women are different from what is put on paper.
All right. We'll continue the conversation in a moment. I'll also give Tembelihle an opportunity to come in. For now, it's 11:30. Time for the latest news headlines.
Thank you very much, Cathy. A very good morning. With the news headlines, Kemudupi Makhalemele. The National Transport Union has called on Transnet to break the cycle of political appointments at the state entity. Home Affairs Minister Aaron Motsoaledi says the late registration of births continues to be a major issue in the Eastern Cape, and judges at the UN's highest court are beginning the second day of a case examining the legality of Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories. Details of these and other stories at midday.
Good day. I'm Madidaba Wasichaba, and these are your top stories. Reports state that Sama Award-winning, platinum-selling artist Vusi Nova is planning to get his leg back and tell his side of the story. After years of getting vilified by the media and becoming a victim of cancel culture, the star is ready to show the world who he is beyond the name and the fame, proving why Angeke Baskone as Mzansi gets to see him unapologetic, uncut and unprovoked. For more on this, catch Vusi Nova Unprovoked starting on the 2nd of March on SABC 1. I'm Madidaba Wasichaba.
The Free State Provincial Government, under the leadership of Premier Mxolisi Dukwana, will host the much-anticipated Free State Investment Conference. The conference seeks to promote the province as an investment destination through showcasing strategic investment projects. Do join us on the 27th of February 2024 at the University of the Free State's main campus in Bloemfontein. The Free State Provincial Government, harnessing partnerships, stimulating growth and development through investment.
Mzansi Africa.
Siyabulela
nangomso.
Thank you for witnessing the Africa Cup of Nations Côte d'Ivoire 2023 in your language of choice on SABC radio stations, digital platforms and SABC TV channels.
Big ups to Unilever for being on board.
Your magnificent and heartwarming support gave millions of South Africans a spectacular and exhilarating experience during AFCON.
Asibonge. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We continue the conversation on The Talking Point. We're reflecting on government's approach to gender-based violence and really framing the conversation through the lens of what we've seen come out of the State of the Province's address in Gauteng and the Western Cape yesterday. Joining me this morning for the conversation is Fina Kodisang, who's the CEO of Soul City, Estelle Otto, policy developer on gender-based violence in the Gauteng Department of Social Development, and Tembeli Khemadi, who's a senior trainer on GBV at Sonke Gender Justice. So, Tembeli, let me give you a chance to respond to what Estelle had to say and how, she says that when they look at the efforts and the coordination as the Department of Social Development, they're satisfied that there is the right level of reporting and even programs that have been taken or undertaken, rather.
I think then in that case, then there would be a huge disconnect from the realities of women and girls on the ground, and we need to be able to bridge the gap. So what are those things that we can say, okay, no, this is working and what is not working, and be able to communicate that to the women, So for me, I think the government might be saying that there is something happening, but what is the disconnect? We're not seeing, their efforts translating to the everyday woman on the ground. So the realities of women are still that, like Fina said, that the cases are being postponed for absolutely no reason. Women still can't get help when they are, calling out for help to the police. Women are still getting chased away from the police stations when they are reporting cases. So what is it that the government is saying that this is actually what is working, So, I mean, by now, you would have thought that, the NSP has been in play for quite a while. And the efforts of even localizing the NSP and saying to women, look, we have a national strategic plan on gender-based violence and femicide, and this is how you can hold us accountable to this national strategic plan, right? This is how you can hold the government accountable to the Domestic Violence Amendment Act, So the issue is, like what Fina said, is the issue of accountability, and the issue of real commitment. Women are, I think we're at a point where women are tired of the lip service. Women actually want to find themselves living in a safe environment, and now going towards elections, we know that women in this country bear the brunt of a lot of the other political or social issues or socio-economic issues in this country. And so you'll see during it, we don't want to see a situation where during election times when, there's, issues happening and that women bear the brunt of whatever political decisions that are being made, and then women have to take then the backseat. So now it's a time where we can't be playing politics at the expense of women and girls. That's what we want not to see happening. We don't want to see that happening, because now the speeches sound like political games. And we can't be playing political games when we have 10,000 rape cases that are reported, and we know that there's many, many more that are going unreported. We know that teenage pregnancy is on the rise. You know, KZN has the worst teenage pregnancies, the worst HIV and AIDS cases. And, you know, it's like, what is the real commitment to women? When you have a national strategic plan and Pillar 2 talks about prevention, what is the government actually doing on prevention, and how is it translating on the ground? So it's not about high-level discussion about, you know, we need to move away from the high-level discussions about GBV. You know, it's a matter of us really, really speaking to the realities of women. What is it that women and girls are facing on the ground on an everyday basis, and how do we respond correctly and prevent this from happening? More than anything is that the country reacts, you know, to a lot of these issues.
You know,
so we need prevention.
Yeah. I've got a question, Tembelihle, for both you and Fina. And if you have government that is saying that, well, we actually think that, you know, yes, there's room for improvement, but we're not doing too badly on the issues. How do you, as activists and people that are working in the space, give feedback to government, and very clear feedback, on where you believe it's not going right, or it's not meeting targets? That way, there's clarity around when we say it's not working, then we know exactly what we're talking about that is not working. Fina?
So, So we do have platforms, Cathy, like even the same War Room platform, that's where feedback is given. You know, there are other quarterly meetings that are held where feedback is given. I don't think there is a lack of feedback that goes to government in terms of saying, this we see is working, but this is not working. Where I see the problem is that feedback is not then taken, because it's not sitting in anybody's KPI. You know, here in Soul City, they know if they say this is what you are supposed to do, there's a KPI that is attached to it. And at the end, when they review, they say you were supposed to do that. It didn't happen. So it's a non-performance on your side. But we don't see that happening. And that is why we will keep raising these issues. Right now, we will get statistics from Minister Bekitele, you know, talking about the crime stats. And we will hear how rape has increased, sexual violence has increased. But who sits and reviews the KPIs, or the people who are supposed to be accountable and say, you are failing because you are supposed to be responsible for the reduction, but this is not happening. What are you not doing? We can give all the feedback, but we are not then the ones who at the end of the day are going to sit with a minister, a director general, a police person who refused to open a case. You know, we make all the noise that we need to make as activists.
All right. Let me take this call from one of our listeners in Kwanyamazane. Good morning, Anonymous.
Good morning, Cathy.
Giyaphila kunjani?
We're good. We're not going to get this thing. We're not going to get this case because even the police are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. A child who is 6 years old was raped last year in December. And then I don't know what happened with the family. They went to the police station. They went back to the police station, and then they dropped the charge of a 6-year-old. How can you drop a case of a 6-year-old without going through the courts and all this thing? And then now, because this thing has been happening over and over again, now the lady, another lady just put this thing on social media. And then some of us on the EFF, we saw this thing, and then we went to the police station to reopen the case. But the policeman just told us, no, we cannot wait. We want to talk to social workers. There's no landline where you can find what social workers. There's nothing. There's no information where you can communicate or talk with a social worker unless you are a relative of a social worker. How are we supposed to get these things? How are we supposed to This is just making this serious. How are we supposed to get against it? Because there's no accountability, even the police themselves. It's not even just stop a case like that. Now, we even try to go to the social worker offices. These social workers are not doing anything. They're just sitting on their head. How are these kids supposed to be? These kids are vulnerable. I have a 6-year-old of myself. I can't imagine that happening to my child. And then when I'm trying to get some help, it's just I'm going to be thrown from pillar to post. How are we supposed to be getting assistance? Because they're just talking, like you said, it's just lip service.
Sure, Anonymous, it's absolutely tragic, the story that you've relayed to us. This young girl, the 6-year-old that you're talking about, who has been raped, and the family opened a case. The charges were then dropped for whatever reason. And
the mother was coerced into dropping the case.
By who? By the police?
By the relative of someone of the guy who raped the child. And now this thing has been going on after the matter that happened.
So it's the same, and it's the same suspect.
The same suspect. Now I just got information that now these kids are 2. There's one who's 6 years old and there's one who's 3 years old.
No.
I'm telling you. And because the way it happened, we heard about another boy who was raped. So it's 3 kids here.
Oh, Anonymous. Sure.
So I don't know how there's a police station in Pinari. There's a policeman there called Mavula. I think is the one that was supposed to be taking care of this case. I don't know. We need to take serious action against this thing. We need to take serious action.
Anonymous, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to put you back through to our producer so we can get the details of this matter. You cannot have a situation where one or more suspects are violating and victimizing young children in this way, and the police are seemingly not doing what they're supposed to, or even taking steps to protect this individual. Fina, I know that we're running out of time on the connection to you. Let me give you a chance to respond to that. What advice do you have for Anonymous? Hello, Fina.
Oh, sorry, Cathy. I thought you were talking to someone else. Look, these are the things we hear when we are in communities. That is why I was telling what Estelle is saying is working on paper. Definitely is not translating at community level. And I think as the community, they need to mobilize and march to that police station. Because, only when we make noise do we get the attention. But Cathy, now that you also know of the story, you can back the community up by giving it media attention and highlighting the plight that communities go through in trying to prevent, because you can hear that he's concerned for his children, and it's a man who's reporting. So, usually I think they don't take us serious because it's always women who are reporting. But now it's a man saying, I'm also concerned for the safety of my own children, and we need to do something. So continue mobilizing other community members, go to the police station, make noise, and let's get this thing resolved, because children cannot suffer at the hands of people who walk freely in the communities. Because what will happen, communities will end up taking the law into their hands, and then you'll see the law reacting, because they'll come and arrest the communities for taking action, yet they don't take action at the time where we.
All right, that is Fina Kodisang, who's the CEO of Soul City. Estelle, do you agree that there is a disconnect between your programs and members of society?
Yeah, I just want to respond on the same caller as well. The SAPS telephone number 1011 is there. Lifeline also, Childline also has a number, And it is so important that if a rape has occurred, a person needs to be examined within 72 hours to get that evidence as well. And like you are mentioning, once the parents are uncooperative, that is a challenge. But there's so many other ways, like the closest clinic can help the child. The Tutuzela Care Center or the government hospital can help. And SAPS also has the national instructions and the child protection units, the way they help. And like you say, if you're not going to stop the perpetrator, it will continue, and more children's lives will be affected so severely. So I think 10111 is always that national command center number is also that has been mentioned as well, but your closest police station. And like she says, we need to track the cases. We need to make sure that every stakeholder did what they were supposed to do. Who was the investigating officer? That information is important. Which police station? What is the name of the child? So that the case can be tracked and make sure that, justice has been served. I think just to talk about the community level, because I think we haven't spoken about that.
Very briefly, Estelle, because I've got to wrap up this conversation very briefly.
We have identified the hotspots as the government departments as well. And there are victim empowerment or gender-based violence forums in the different hotspots. So as part of the NSP, we are saying that everybody that wants to be part of stopping violence, contact your closest Department of Social Development, your municipality, and we can work together to say enough is enough.
All right.
We need our women to be safe.
That's where we're going to have to leave it for this morning. Tembelihle, Estelle, and Fina, thank you for your time. We're going to follow up with what Anonymous has said in the rape that has taken place, alleged rape in Kwanyamazane. That's where we leave it on the talking point for today. Up next is the book reading.
The book reading. Please note the views on this book are those of the writer and not of SAFM. SAFM presents the next episode of Daddy Issues. Written by Onkabetse Retabile Masobe. Read by Lerato Mvelase. My dad is dead, Nolwandle repeated as tears ran down her face. Ufile, he's gone, she continued as she struggled to process what she had just heard. All Nolwandle could think about was how that was not the best way to find out your dad had passed on. The woman, whoever she was, didn't even give her time to ask any questions. Did he have any parting words for me? This was what she'd wanted to ask before hearing a beep. It was all she desired to know at that point. As the news continued to sink in, the numbness Nolwandle initially felt began to subside. When Dada passed on, she had one emotion, that being grief. Now she felt everything. She was angry, sad, confused, disappointed. She quickly consoled herself with the fact that now she could chalk his absence up to his death. The slippers and pajamas she'd bought him remained on the table. She'd left them there so she wouldn't forget to take them with her the following day. Nolwandle wasn't sure which was more difficult, trying to get Patrick's attention for the past 11 years or finding out the arrangements for his funeral. She eventually decided to call his number, hopeful someone would answer it, and thankfully she reached someone who could help her. Nolwandle introduced herself over the phone and cut to the chase about the funeral arrangements. Her dad's death was a private moment for her. She didn't tell any of her friends. The only reason Mondli even knew about it was because he was in the room when she found out. As her mother's friends brought their condolences throughout the week, Nolwandle was fine. Patrick was not in her life. She wanted to mourn, but she couldn't. She didn't know what she'd say. She missed if she were to be asked. His absence, which was now permanent. He was gone. Regardless, she bought him a wreath. She cried. She seriously cried. She truly cried for the first time as she watched them carry his coffin out of the church. The reality of his death hit her in that moment. He was really dead. She'd seen him just the other day. They'd spoken. She'd rebuilt the hope she'd had when she'd met him for the first time. She'd thought that at some point in his life, he'd realized that he had a child and would encourage himself to step up. She'd always had this hope, even after she'd cut him off. In that moment, she saw all her hopes in the coffin. It was official. It was never going to happen. Nolwandle then got angry at herself. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have pushed more for a relationship, she thought as the hymns framed her thoughts. I should have gone. I should have gone. I should have gone to see him sooner. Everything around her appeared to be moving in slow motion. All she could do was stare deeply at the coffin. You really are your father's daughter. You don't show up when you need to. You didn't show up for him, she concluded, as her mother nudged her to start moving out. She had taken time for granted. She thought that she and God were on the same page. It was a sweltering Saturday afternoon, the heat now unavoidably present, especially at the cemetery. There were so many burials taking place that afternoon. The traffic heading into the cemetery was like peak time morning traffic on a weekday, with the inclusion of roadworks taking place. When they finally reached his place of burial, Nolwandle observed them placing his coffin over the grave. It was as though all the emotion she had since she met him hit her all at once. As she tried to understand exactly what it was that she was feeling, her mother broke down. It was the first time she had seen her mother show any form of emotion towards Patrick. Excuse me, did you even love this man? Nolwandle, filled with confusion, so badly wanted to ask her mother. She then remembered that they were in love at some point, although she struggled to understand how their interaction could even be called love. When her parents met, Patrick was finalizing a divorce and gave his wife everything, or so he said, and so Nolwandle was informed. However, from Nolwandle's experience with men from her generation and observation of the generations before, men lie, and usually unprovoked. Her mother then took him in during that period, which to this day still made no sense to Nolwandle. She didn't understand why her mother thought it was a good idea to take a man in. Her mother then fell pregnant. To this day, Patrick's family, whom Nolwandle had never met, despises her mother. To them, her mother was the cause of Patrick's divorce. Nolwandle struggled to understand why her mother would cry over a man who disappointed her repeatedly, the same man who didn't accompany her to a single gynecologist appointment, despite claiming to want a child, the same man who wasn't present for her birth. Nolwandle could hear the pain in her mother's voice as she told her the stories. The same man who messed her up because bekadlala abantwana, destruction boy, dribbler number one. Nolwandle had known cheating from a young age because her dad was a pro at it. Nolwandle genuinely couldn't get it. She tried making sense of it, but it was to no avail. As they began lowering the coffin, people cried hysterically. Nolwandle raged internally as she shed a few tears. This was it. He was being laid to rest. He was being laid to rest as if he deserved this rest. Nolwandle lost it. You? Die? You? What do you mean? You're the last person who was supposed to die. You were supposed to say, no, I can't. You were supposed to fight death. You needed to fix things with me first, and then you could die. How do you say, God, I surrender? I don't get it. You should have waited. All you had to do was wait. Wait one more day for me. You should have waited. You should have said no. That's the least you could have done for me. You should have just fought for me. The one time I needed you to fight for me, you couldn't. Nolwandle gasped. This is rubbish, she sobbed. It's okay, my baby. At least now we know he's not being useless. He's just 6 feet under. Mama consoled her. Mama was a strong woman. She was tough. All she had been through in her life had forcefully taught her from a young age that one could not be weak in life. Through every difficulty, one needs to gather every bit of strength one may have, even if it's just 1%, and champion through. Mama's consolation towards her granddaughter was the best she could give. Mama lost her mother at the tender age of 14, then her father in her early 20s. As though she hadn't experienced enough loss, Mama then lost her first husband when Nolwandle's mother was 9 years old. The loss of loved ones had numbed Mama early in life. She'd been on her own for a long time, and back then, there was no therapy. Mama's way of showing love, which may have been how she had learned to cope all these years back, was by showing you how to be strong and being brutally honest with you. Nolwandle appreciated Mama's teachings, though, the main one being the importance of resilience. One could not be weakened by their circumstances. Tata was Nolwandle's stepfather. He loved and adored Mama.